Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
And also by the Toronto Yoga Show and Conference. Come and see me at the Toronto Yoga Show. I am going to be presenting there on Friday with my good friend Amanda McKinney. And let me tell you some little personal update here. As this episode goes out in real time, Amanda has flown here to Canada to visit and to do our prep work for this Toronto conference. I am so excited. I will be there the entire weekend talking with yoga teachers. So if you are going, let's hang out. Reach out to me and let me know. And it would be so fun to meet in person. To find out more, go to theconnectedyogateacher.com and look under trainings and events. Hello and welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I'm a mom of three, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant who works for yoga teachers. This podcast was created for you so that you can feel connected to information and inspiration every single week and feel supported as you navigate these sometimes very tricky jungles of being a yoga teacher and a business owner. I am so excited about today's interview. It is really interesting, and I feel like I wouldn't have found this if it wasn't for my really dear friend, Erica. So a shout out of thanks to her for introducing me to Horse Wisdom Yoga. So you may have noticed that there has been a trend in recent years surrounding yoga and animals. Puppy yoga, cat yoga, I feel like that's every day at our house, cat yoga, and even goat yoga. So these are some of the variations of yoga that we might have come across where there are animals present during the yoga practice. Today's podcast guest, Fotini Chandrika Walton, offers her clients something very unique, Horse Wisdom Yoga. And I'm excited that you get to hear this very specialized form of combining time with horses and yoga. No, it's nothing to do with yoga on horseback. I would imagine that that would be a little bit dangerous, but it's more than just doing yoga with horses grazing in the practice area. So I had experienced this first, and you'll hear me talking about that in today's episode. And at the end of today's episode, I'll tell you a bit more about my experience. I'd love for you to hear what Horse Wisdom Yoga is, and then to hear what my own personal experience was like. It was really fascinating for me to know the experience and then interview the founder of Horse Wisdom Yoga and then share that with you. I'm so excited that you get to hear that. The other thing that I want to call attention to is that, like any specialization or niche, we often have to tell people what it is that we offer. And we work away at this. You'll hear Fotini do this today. And I had this discussion with my friend Erica, who has taken Fotini's training and is offering Horse Wisdom Yoga. And I was asking her, how are you talking about this when you're marketing it? Because it's very hard to put all of the words that explain this experience. The same thing happens with a regular yoga class. And how do you put that all into a very brief description and tell someone about what your yoga class is like? It is something tricky, and I want you to keep that in mind as you have a listen today. How could you describe your yoga to people who have never experienced yoga? Really, I think this is a fascinating interview to learn more about how one yoga teacher decided to really incorporate unique elements into a yoga offering, finding a niche that really sets them apart. If you're looking for links and notes, we have you covered. We take the notes for you. That can be found at theconnectedyogateacher.com/157. A big shout out to Robin from Texas for leaving a review on our Facebook page. Robin said, "Since I found the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast about a year ago, my life has taken a 180. I'm launching my new studio that is geared to private and small group yoga in the new community I now live in. I have business plans." And there's a surprised emoji. What the what? Thank you, Shannon, for creating a community that encourages curiosity, sharing of wisdom, and growth. I'm grateful. We are super grateful for you, Robin, that you are a part of the Connected Yoga Teacher community and that you took the time to leave a review. That means a lot to our team. Speaking of reviews and the podcast, this is officially today our 3-year podcast anniversary. It's like our birthday today, and we're 3. One of the best ways that you can celebrate with us is to leave a review. And I like to try and read each and every one here on the podcast. So you might even hear your name called and your review read out. Before we hop in and meet Fotini, let's hear our hot tip of the week from the team over at Schedulicity.
Hey there, connected yoga teachers. This is Caitlin with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Try out Schedulicity's waitlisting if your workshops are filling up. When someone tries to book space online for a workshop that's full, they'll be invited to join the waitlist. You'll see them in the order in which they join, so you can easily work on a first-come, first-served basis. If you have a cancellation, you can pull your waitlist clients into your workshop and they'll automatically be sent a notification telling them that they made the cut. Keep your workshops full without keeping your roster on your mind.
Thank you so much, Schedulicity. Let's dive in and meet Fotini. So Fotini Chandrika Walton is the founder of the Big Red Barn Creativity and Wellness Center Incorporated, which is a nonprofit organization in Ontario, Canada. Yep, that's where I live, where she has focused her efforts on the development of equine guided wellness modality called horse wisdom yoga since 2016. Fotini shares today in the interview how she was introduced to the yogic lifestyle at the young age of 6, and she officially began her practice in 2004. As a child, Fotini had an undeniable connection to animals, with horses in particular, and she describes herself as having the ability to hear them speak. Through a journey of personal transformation, Fotini uncovered the power of yoga in combination with the ancestral wisdom of horses, where the non-predatory nature of the horse and the principles of yoga bring to life the ancient history of horse-human connection. Fotini, along with her herd of horses, offer clients private sessions, group experiences, retreats, and training opportunities. Let's find out more about Fotini and her work with yoga and horses. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast, Fotini. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm so excited to be here.
So tell our listeners, where did your yoga journey begin? When did you first start learning yoga?
So my journey with yoga began actually as a very young girl. My best friend is Hindu, and her father is a yoga teacher. He's in his mid-80s now, actually. And when I was a young girl, I would be frequently at their house because we had some stuff going on at our home. So I would go to their place. They lived in the same building as we did growing up. And I spent a lot of time there. And her dad, I remember, as my family was going through our challenges, her dad would sit me at this round table and share all this yogic wisdom with me. And, it wasn't so much about poses. It was more about the spirituality and the wisdom that he lived, as a Hindu man. And so that's where it began. I was probably about 6 when I started to become exposed to this like very deep spiritual wisdom. When I was about 13, I started reading on my own, started studying, not so much yoga in particular, but like self-help books and different sort of books on spirituality and self-realization. So when I started to actually start to engage in the physical asana practice was 2002. I started getting anxiety attacks. So it was sort of like the manifestation of like years and years and years of trauma and instability, root chakra stuff. That was the first place I went with healing, was right to the Muladhara. And things started to sort of bubble up inside because I wasn't really healing them. Like I wasn't really feeling them and healing them. I was sort of taking the escape route oftentimes. Even though I was diving deep into the books and studies, I still was, I think, suppressing a lot of these emotions from the past. So long story short, in 2002, I went to see a naturopath about these anxiety attacks. And one of the first things she gave me was lavender essential oil. And shortly after that, recommended that I take up the yoga practice. So it was amazing because I remember my very first yoga class. I came in and I was a little bit nervous. I was by myself and I'd never been there before. And I was feeling vulnerable just because I could feel the safety of the space. So already in my body, I was starting to have this sort of vulnerable feeling. And I allowed it. And I don't remember much about the movement in the practice, but I remember laying in Shavasana for the first time and just experiencing this overwhelm of emotional release. And I couldn't even really pinpoint what this release was or where it was coming from. And what I loved so much about that was that it didn't matter. What mattered was that I was finally allowing my body to feel so I could heal.
Oh, that's amazing. What a great story.
And it's never ended since.
Right. I love how yoga was there when you were a young girl, even though you probably didn't understand the depth of it. It was there, and then it was the asana that you found later on. That's amazing. So tell us now, fast forward to now, what is the work that you're now doing and who do you do it for?
Awesome. Well, this is the interesting thing is how you mentioned how it started, like with my story, it kind of started with the spiritual aspect and the wisdom of yoga. It's funny because it's kind of come full circle, and that's sort of what we're back to now in my niche practice. I share my practice with horses. The modality that I've created in Equine Guided Wellness is called Horse Wisdom Yoga. It's a really powerful modality that joins the healing powers of the yoga practice, all 8 limbs of this practice, and combined with the powerful connection that horses have with our spiritual self. It's all sort of happened again through allowing my practice to evolve, and horses came into my life around the same time. So it's very similar to yoga, which is how these two passions married each other. I began loving horses from a very young age, although I lived in the city, and my parents were not in a situation to put me in like riding lessons or any real exposure to the physical animal. But I would see them, like I would see them in my ajna chakra and my third eye, and they gave me this element of grace and freedom when I would see them there. And I just kept following my bliss. And uh, in 2002, when I saw the naturopath and I was having the anxiety, I also started to hang out with horses. So I would work all week, and then on the weekends I would get up at 5 in the morning and I would go to a horse racing breeding stable and shovel the poop. And I did this just so I could be around them. And it slowly evolved where I tried some riding lessons, Western, English, a few different styles, and something was just not fitting right for me. It still wasn't that click. Um, I felt a lot of sadness from the horses, and I felt a lot of my own sort of emotions coming through my time with them. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. Like, how are they mirroring me so eloquently? And I felt so safe, in that spiritual space and that healing space with them. So anyway, fast forward 10 years of sort of wandering around and still having my yoga practice. I had done probably my first and second yoga teacher training by then, but sort of wandering around, and suddenly I realized that this is it. This is the connection between horses and humans. It's yoga, and some may call it yoga, some may call it healing, some may call it love. I call it yoga because I feel like everything is yoga. And so when I feel this depth of anything, I'm like, this is yoga. Any time that we're mindful and we're present and we're out of the mind and feeling, in from the body, the space of the body, and the body is, subtle and physical, it's yoga. So uh, together they came, and horse wisdom yoga began through much research. I've devoted my life to researching the horse human connection. Even in 2002, when I started to work at the thoroughbred breeding racing stable, I was still reading the books and researching horses, and I just didn't know that there was another way to be with them, because the only way that was out there that you could really find was like riding them, or driving them, or racing them. There wasn't, a way that I could just be with their magnificence without any expectation.
Wow. So then did you go on to take any training that was with horses and yoga, or how did that start?
So I did take a program in facilitated equine experiential learning, which is what the modality is called. And I did take a program through that modality, which was great. It really gave me validation that like this is real, right? What I was experiencing was real. And the more I researched and the more books that I read, I realized that there's a lot of people doing this sort of connection work with horses in different ways. So then there was nothing that really involved yoga, though. I didn't find anything that really resonated deeply that I could bring my yoga practice into it. So and even like some kind of like a spiritual element, right? So I created it and it's been amazing. And people have come from all over to experience it, whether it's in private sessions or retreats or our training program for yoga teachers specifically. Um, yeah, just realizing that there is another way to be with horses that doesn't involve so much restraint for the horse. And what's really cool about this, Shannon, and to all the listeners who I'm humbled to be having hear me and my story, the amazing part is I started to realize that they were reflecting us as humanity, right? All of this restraint, all of this expectation, work, 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 and it's like, wait a second, what are we doing to ourselves? And by giving the horses this freedom to sort of be horses, everybody that's come through here, including myself and my family, has started to realize that, wow, we're giving ourselves the freedom to be humans.
Right. Not just doing, but being. Oh, that's amazing. So for just to let our listeners know, the way I sort of found out about your yoga offering, your training, and connected with you was from my really good friend, Erica. So we've been friends for a long time. Back in when we did yoga dance, when we did Thai yoga massage, when we were like teaching yoga here and there, just playing with a lot of different things. And so she said to me, I just took this training and now I want to practice. I went out and did it. And it's really hard for me to explain the impact that it had on me. So she was, she said, I'm really new at this. I'm going to take my book. And I just thought I'll be a good guinea pig. It was tremendous, like from her leading it right from the very first that she's starting to offer this. Her facilitating is great. I mean, she's been a yoga teacher for a long time. She's an amazing person, but also this whole element with the horses. But still, when I go to tell people about it, it's very hard to describe it. So how do you tell someone, say you meet them on the street and they're like, what do you do? What do you say to someone like in a shorter bit of, or can you?
I love that. It is definitely difficult to explain. The way I sort of describe it is that this is a way to slow down, breathe, and engage in relationship dynamic with a non-predatory being. So that's really the key here, is that humans are predators. We
Mhm.
have our eyes in front of our head, right? And the horses are non-predatory, so they're actually in the wild considered prey. So in order for a horse to make a connection with a human, they have to feel really safe. And it's the subtleties in our behavior, and we're not just physical behavior, but energetic behavior as well, and our emotional state, all of those things, our heartbeat, our breath, everything, that conveys the message whether or not this horse is safe. So all of a sudden, you could go to numerous yoga classes and practice with wonderful yoga teachers. But my greatest teachers have been the horses, because I can't lie. I can't say when I walk in the door, "Oh, Fotini, how are you? Namaste. I'm wonderful. It's great to see you." Meanwhile, I've got a whole bunch of things going on inside. The horses are going to look at me and say, "No, you're not. What's up?"
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I really appreciate the work that you do. And I also appreciate that you run a business and you have to market this. And what I'm so interested in kind of digging into with our connected yoga teacher listeners is when you specialize, when you niche down like this, you it's almost like you don't just have to tell people what yoga is, you have to tell them what this whole other offering is. So, what are some of the ways that you do that?
That's a great question, Shannon. I have noticed, first of all, that I'm really authentic in how I present myself to the world. And I think that has been my greatest asset when it comes to quote marketing my business. And I put that in quotes only because, as I mentioned to you before, I find it so difficult to put this kind of work into sort of a business model. However, if and I believe this, and I share this with my the wellness professionals in my coaching practice. I really believe that when we show up in a place of real authenticity, that and we allow, and we're open for receiving, the abundance just sort of happens. And that's really what has happened here. Sharing things, sharing stories, of course, with respect for privacy of my clients, but sharing tidbits of stories and photos, non-identifying, of clients working with the horses. And even that has to be an art, right? Because like you have to make sure that you're not taking photos at inappropriate times and things like that. So really tapping into my horse-like self, which the horses have helped me become, and the working with the little subtleties that I can to share this practice out in the world. So I do that through social media, like I said, through sharing tidbits of experiences and non-identifying photos of clients taken at appropriate times, sharing my own story, so in blog posts and other things like that. And really, at the end of the day, most of what has manifested here on our farm has been through word of mouth. It's been through people experiencing it and then telling others and then telling others, and people eventually driving, hours to come here and even flying to be here with the horses and I. So it's been incredible to be able to show up in this unlike a business, as one would think a business is. Because I've ran businesses before. I've been in real estate, I've been in law, I've ran businesses before. So I know that element, and I don't feel that way with this work. I feel like I am really like just being me, which is so liberating, because you just kind of show up every day and be you and allow an opening, of transparency into your life. And the resonance, calls to someone's heart and they say, wow, I need to go there. I need to meet these horses. I need to experience this work. And then the next thing you know, they're enrolled in the training so it's just really being open-hearted and doing your own work healing. And that's what I tell those in my coaching practice, but also in our training programs, is really your biggest job is to take care of you. And your biggest job is to take care of your healing and loving yourself and caring for yourself. Because at the end of the day, there's a vibration that we put out into the world through our existence. And if it doesn't matter how much marketing or how expensive your website is, or how many trade shows you attend, if you aren't showing up with that vibration that is truly representative of what you're asking or what you're offering or inviting into your practice, then it's you know not going to vibrate at that level that you can reach the hearts of your potential clients, students, your market.
hmm This is so interesting you say this. We have an episode, and I don't know where it will come out in regards to your episode, but we have an episode with Barry Reisman, and she talked about exactly this. Like, she thinks the biggest thing that has built her business is sticking with her personal practice. So sometimes I think we get caught up in, like we already talked about, the doing. We get more praise for that, for sure, than the being and like doing the inner work. But it really does make a difference. So what does it look like then in terms of, because I hear you saying like we need to open to the abundance and it comes in and there's word of mouth. And that sounds more like you're showing up and it's just happening, which I'm sure there's a huge element of that. But I'm guessing, maybe I'm wrong, that there's also like a structured part. Like, okay, I send my emails out here, I market this way. Is there that sort of thing also happening?
So what I do as far as structure would be social media posts, which I don't like pre-make posts. Like I know some people will like I don't know what's called content creating, like where you
Yeah.
kind of create the content before it goes out and then it just kind of gets sent out automatically. I don't do any of that. What I do is I post when I'm inspired. So that way the posts again vibrate at the place I'm at when I create the post. So I don't know how, and again, if it works for people, that's fantastic. But like how I could sit and like create content all day and be like, okay, this is what's going out in the next month, So for me, I really only post when I feel inspired. So sometimes it'll be like every day, and then all of a sudden there's 5 days where I'm not posting. So I know there's so much emphasis, and I think this is where some people, just from what I hear in my practices, with this emphasis on and this pressure really, if you will, on like content and how many times you have to post and that sort of thing. And I find really if it's not coming through really naturally, it can be felt. And even though people might not know what they're feeling, like maybe they don't know that they're feeling that it's not natural, or maybe they don't know that they're feeling that this content was created 3 months ago, and prepared for release on that date. Maybe they don't know they're feeling that, but they're feeling something. So for me, what I put out is really from a place of inspiration. If I feel inspired, I post, and I get inspired a lot because I live with horses. So,
Right.
I'm inspired by them and nature and yoga. So that's sort of what I put out. But I do a monthly newsletter. So I do have like a subscription on my website. When they visit, they can subscribe to the newsletter, and then the monthly newsletter will keep them up to date on happenings on the farm and with the horses and different events that we have coming up. So I think it's a great way to engage with people, is just kind of having that way to sort of reach out and say, hey, it's me again. This is what the horses have been up to. This is what's been happening over the past month, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then we also do things like open houses. So we'll do a couple of open houses a year. And we offer some karma events. So, where we don't ask for any monetary exchange. We might ask for a non-perishable food item for the food bank or something like that. But just offering some insight as to the work we do and how it can help people, in their lives without them having to invest in a training or a session. And I think as far as structure goes, that's probably about it. Like we've got our open houses, our newsletters, and then our social media posts. And we are going to be at booth 1236 at the Toronto Yoga Conference
Oh,
and show
yay.
this year. Yes, we're so excited. So look for the big red barn. We have like a humongous red barn that's going to be our backdrop. I'm so excited about this. So
I'll
yeah,
be there. I'll be there. We'll have to
yay.
connect in person. We like to try and gather as many connected yoga teachers as possible, but we like to really see if we can visit and hang out. So that would be fun.
It's going to be awesome. So yeah, I really look forward to seeing you there and to being a part of the Connected Yoga teacher crew and having you visit us at the Big Red Barn. It'll be
Yeah.
great.
So that's great that you do all of this and you kind of have it laid out. What about in terms of when you meet with people? Like, do you work one-on-one? Do you work with groups? I know you said you have a training. Like, what does that schedule kind of look like? Do you have a limit of how many people you meet with in a week? Are they certain days?
Absolutely. So again, this is sort of how I show up in my practice, is really caring for myself and caring for my horses. So the horses, just by observation, and I have a deep connection, and I do communicate with them on a regular basis. They've kind of helped me shape the numbers as to how many people we see and all of that. So originally, I had thought, okay, we can have 8 in a training program. That very quickly went down to 4. So the horses
Wow.
were like, 8 is way too much energy, 4 maximum. So I said, okay, and it made sense. There's 4 horses, 4 people, it just energetically made sense. So we have switched from 8 to 4 in any given training program. And then as far as clients go, if the horses engage in our training program, which is 5 days, they get a full week off. So they won't see anybody for a week. And then when we are in season and there isn't the training program, we have a maximum of 5 private sessions per week. So
Okay.
that's kind of our model is, and again, it comes back to that self-care, because you know what? They're horses. Like they don't have that busy mind like we do. They're horses. So if they're not feeling like they're being honored for their energy and their time and their efforts, then they're just not going to want to participate. And in this model, we don't force anything on the horses. There's no restraint. They're not
Right.
forced to do anything. They get to choose who they're working with, when they're working, which one's working. There's a lot of freedom of choice. They've shown me how important it is to really become the listener, and in becoming the listener to the horses and what they need in order to offer an authentic connection with humans and with their work, is reflective of what I need to do for myself to really show up for my clients. So we keep numbers really small around here, and it's reflected in some of our fees. Our fees might be a little higher than some other companies or organizations. We are not for profit, so at the end of the day, anything that we generate is going back into our organization, just to keep making things better for our students and for our horses. So there definitely is a lot of boundaries. I don't want to call them limitations because I don't feel like we're limited, but there's a lot of healthy boundaries around our energy, which keeps the vibration that we operate at so high and keeps people's experiences so rich, because we're not drained. We reserve. We have a reserve, and we don't overextend ourselves in that way. So.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And there's family and stuff too, right? Like I take, for example, cooking for my family. To me, not every exchange or not every, measure of abundance is going to show up in my bank account.
Right.
For me, abundance is like, I get to cook 3 meals a day for my family. I get to can my pickles and, jar my pickles and, so abundance, and that's such a big message, is that abundance is not always going to show up in the form of a monetary exchange. And I really believe that.
I love that you said that you've figured out the numbers and the horses have helped you. And with that, you're not afraid then to let the prices reflect that. I think that's super important when you know that there's a training, there's only going to be 4 people. It obviously has to be more than if there's 40 people.
Exactly. And the experience is going to be a lot more rich. I've been to programs where I'm one of 15, and it's a very different experience than being one of 4.
So what is the training? Like, when is your next training happening? We're recording this in 2019, but it's not going to go out until 2020.
Okay.
So when is your next training happening?
So all of our trainings take place obviously in the warmer months because we are outside a lot. I believe our next one is coming up in June of 2020. And we have 3 scheduled for 2020, possibly a 4th one. And the dates are all on our website at horsewisdomyoga.com.
That is so cool. And then what is it like can you kind of paint the picture of what it's like when someone first comes for a session with you and a horse? First of all, how much does it cost? And then what do they expect? Like, what happens in that first visit?
So when the when the client arrives, so first of all, the communication is happening before they arrive. So we make contact, whether they telephone or they email. There's some connection there, and then the first step is I send them their invoice. So the invoice gets sent before the session. There is a cancellation policy and all that stuff. So if they need a refund, there is a policy there, of course. But there's a reason for that. And the reason is that this is a very intuitive modality. So as soon as they've exchanged that energy by paying the invoice, they have invited me in and the horses into their energetic space. So that's kind of their permission.
That's
right?
amazing.
They've officially signed up.
Right.
And when they sign up, they know it's an intuitive modality. So they're signing up to have us tap into their energy and that stuff. So that's the first step. And then when they arrive, what I do is, let's rewind a little bit here. Before they arrive, so about 24 hours before the client's arrival, I'm already checking with the horses. We're already having sort of an energetic communication about tomorrow's session. The morning of the session. So all of our sessions are never any earlier than 10 or 11, because the morning is a very important time for the horses and I when we're having a session that day. So I kind of check in with the horses and see who is making a deeper connection. It's really obvious. So I'll start walking down, and then there will be one horse that's like staring at me, and he or she just like won't waver in their stare. And then I'll approach them and say, yeah, so-and-so's coming in a couple of hours, and, I'm with, or sometimes I am sure, and I'll share that, and I'll say they're dealing with the loss of a loved one, or, whatever it is that that they've shared. And oftentimes they don't share anything. They just kind of book the appointment, and they're just interested in seeing what transpires. Right. So anyway, whatever I do know, I'll share with the horses. And of course, don't be fooled. They already know everything anyway, because they vibe so high, and they pick up so much information. And then the client arrives, and what I do is I make notes. So before the client arrives, I'll make notes of what I experience with the horses. If I pull a card, an oracle card or something before the session, or an essential oils. I'm also an aromatherapist, so I work with the oils intuitively with their healing properties. So anyway, I'll see whatever pops up for me, and I'll make notes of it, and then I'll just kind of put that aside. The client arrives. The first step is having them check in. So they sign their waiver, and they have a seat with me. We have a little table in the barn without the horses there. It's just the humans for now. And we make that energetic connection, because the first thing is that they feel safe with me, because we're going out into a field with, about, let's say 1,200, about 5,000 or 6,000 pounds of horsepower. Right. They need to know that they're safe. So that's the first step, is we sit together, we just kind of sink into each other's energy. I ask some questions, we might pull a horse card or something. And then what I'll do is have them look at a picture of the horses, of each horse, and I'll have them tell me what each horse represents to them. And again, I make a note of it. We may return to it, we may not. We get out, then we'll start to approach the horses. And on the walk down to the horses, we tend to talk about the approach. So this is where all of the wheels start to spin, because I'll say, well, where are you off to in such a rush? The person's like beelining for the gate, to see the horses. I'm like, whoa, what's the rush? Right. And then they kind of stop, and they're like, yeah, like, what is the rush? Right. And we're programmed this way, right? We're programmed. And the predator within us, and the whole, fight, flight, sympathetic nervous system engagement that most of us are living in 80% of our lives, is engaged. So it's like, I'm going from A to B, and that's where I'm going. So we don't. We stop, we breathe, we talk about non-predatory approach. We soften our eyes. As humans, our eyes are often so big and aware. So we kind of soften the body, soften the eyes, take a few deep breaths, and change our approach to be more horse-like. And then from there, I'll be honest with you, Shannon, nobody knows what happens. It's different in every single session, and there's never a plan.
Right. Well, I definitely experienced this in my session with Erica and the horse. And it stuck with me for quite a while. Like, I felt like Erica was definitely holding space and asking questions. And then I did not expect, what kind of came out of it. I did not expect it at all. So,
and what's really happening when you're in those sessions is that, first of all, what I find in doing this for years now and developing this and researching this, what I'm finding is the biggest reveal is the patterns. So what horses really reveal for us with their honesty is, and their very, very keen awareness, especially of energy and emotion and body language. And they really detect when something is not authentic. Like, they can't connect to a busy mind, right? They have very small thinking brains. Their energy and their connection is from their heart. They have huge hearts. So the heart itself, even in us humans, is a kind of its own brain. Like, the heart receives information actually before the brain. So the horses are already, like, we're already in communication with the horses before we even think about it, right? Mm-hmm. And actually, as soon as we start to think about it, we actually can cause a disconnect. So they're going to keep us engaged from the heart. And that's where people notice patterns. For example, maybe they notice that that they have no boundaries. Maybe the horse is just kind of walking all over in their space, and they're realizing, like, I have no authentic boundary, like healthy boundary around myself.
Right.
Because it has to be real, right? Like it's got to come from that real place. So then we work on that. We let the horse kind of reveal what is the pattern, what's going on, and then we work on it. And sometimes, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a problem. Like it doesn't have to be a challenge. It's just learning more about yourself, right? So it's not like we're looking to fix anything or change anything. It's just like, let me see what the horse has to say. I
Mhm.
just want to see, right? Yeah, and it
Yeah.
changes every day. Like we're not the same every day. We're impermanent, right? We're constantly changing with our cycles, with the phases of our bodies, of the moon, so we're in constant ebb and flow. And I think that's another thing that the horses help us to embrace and really honor is that everything is in cycles.
Right. And so when people come and they have that first visit, do they usually book again, or is this something that's kind of a one-off thing?
That's a great question too. So a lot of people will book one and have a life-changing experience. So if you check out our Google reviews, we have 2 Google quote business quote pages, Horse Wisdom Yoga, as well as the Big Red Barn Creativity and Wellness Center. You will see reviews on there that talk about people having life-changing experiences from one single session. So sometimes it is one, and sometimes that person is driven. Like we had a couple session where they drove 6 hours to be here to do a couple session, and it was incredible. It was incredible. The other woman who just emailed me, she had a session a year ago. She just emailed me about a month ago and told me that this one session she had changed her life. It helped her make a really big decision that she was kind of on the fence about making. And she made the decision shortly after the session, and it has been life changing for her a year later. So, but we also have a 6-session package, and that's very common as well. And that's sort of like the breakthrough package, so you come 6 times, 6 experiences, and that's when you can really go deep into the self-realization of yoga and the yoking, between human and horse, and what kind of information is revealed when we allow that and when we go there.
Right. So at the time of this recording, how much is it to go for one session versus the package of 6?
So one session is $225 plus HST. Our 6-session package, when paid in full, is basically the cost of 5 sessions. So you pay
Right.
for 5, but you get 6.
And so the 225, is that for the hour?
It's about an hour and a half.
Okay, an hour and a half.
But as I mentioned, like it was, and that fee, we've had to make adjustments to, because what I was noticing was I was tapping in with the client and spending so much time preparing for the sessions. And then originally when we had our price, it was for 1 hour. So then what was happening was I was feeling pressured to complete the session within an hour, because you don't know if someone has somewhere to go, or and even honoring our time as well, right?
Yeah.
And that was never happening. It was always over an hour. So I thought, you know what, let's do a higher exchange and be free to have the full hour and a half, So
Right.
it's not always an hour and a half. Sometimes it's an hour and 15 minutes, sometimes it's an hour and 45 minutes. So it's somewhere around an hour and a half.
Right. Oh, that's great. And I love also how it does really reflect, like I'm thinking of when you said earlier that you can only fit so many people in. It's your energy, it's the horse's energy. You're really respectful of their time and how long, and how this is a process that you don't know how long it's going to take. And that really has to reflect in what you then charge. So this is in Canadian dollars as well, in case our connected yoga teachers are wondering. That's always like such a common question is, how much do you charge, like, for what you do? And we've had quite a few episodes that dig into this. So thanks for sharing that.
Of
Is there
course.
anything uh, is there anything that you would suggest yoga teachers do if they're interested in learning how to facilitate this? Like, it sounds like you had this very intuitive nature. Like, can anyone teach horse wisdom yoga? Can they train to do it? Or is there something that they could do if they're thinking about it?
It's an awesome question. So definitely I was a born intuitive and a born empath, and with this connection with animals, something that I've had my entire life. However, I have put this together in such a way where anybody can do it. So, and I've done that by taking the science and delivering the science. So that way people are confident in knowing that there is something scientific happening, whether you're intuitive or not, there is something scientific happening. Also, by them coming here for 40 hours of training with me in the herd and then carrying on to have a supported practicum period, they are also going to be heightening their intuition because they're going to be around us for 40 hours. So just by sort of stepping into that space and being in this with us, they will raise their intuitive level. And then I also share with them ways to strengthen their prana, and their intuition. So, and again, it's a lot of it is based on personal practice, right? So, by breaking down the science of it, I believe it helps build the confidence. So that way, if someone isn't maybe as intuitive by nature or as empathic by nature, they still can facilitate this work. I do believe that people become more intuitive the more they sort of listen. So that is another element where maybe they don't step into the work as, feeling like they're a born intuitive. But let's face it, Shannon, we all are. Because at one point in our lives, in one point of our history, we had to be to survive.
Right. So true. It's very true. Oh, that's
so it's
great.
in us, right? That is an ancestral wisdom. And it's there. And the horses help us rewild and return to that intuitive nature. We all have it.
That's great. And I also know that you really support your trainees once they leave, and there's this unexpected, you need to meet with people a certain number of times and the support is really there following. So that is fantastic. If yoga teachers are interested in learning more, if they feel like they want to train or they want to come out and experience this, what is your website again?
So we have www.horsewisdomyoga.com.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I have learned a lot. And I'm really curious to hear if there are other yoga teachers around the world that are also working with horses and using yoga on horses. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And on behalf of myself and in partnership with the horses, thank you. Namaste. And thank you.
Okay, connected yoga teachers, I want to hear from you. How was that experience of learning all about horse wisdom yoga from Fotini? Thank you so much again, Fotini. Your respect and care of not only yourself, but also the horses that you work with is really amazing. And it was so interesting to find out how this came to be, how you offer this, and sort of all of the details that go into horse wisdom yoga. As I said at the top of the episode, Connected Yoga Teachers, I wanted to share a bit of my experience when Erica led me through this horse wisdom yoga. So as I said, I just signed up as Erica's friend saying, I'll be the guinea pig. I totally know what it's like to start something new and, to want to have your book and to read it. Pick me. I'd like to be the guinea pig. I'd like to try it. I didn't have any expectations going in, and I was really just there being led by Erica, who's amazing at holding space. I will say that. She's fantastic at what she does. She's been a yoga teacher for a long time. So she led me through this experience, and it's really hard to put into words, but I'll try and put it into a few words. All of a sudden, partway through the experience, I had a huge release. And for me, this release came in gasping, sobbing, tears. And just to clarify, I'm okay with tears. My kids sometimes will say, oh my goodness, Mom, it's just a movie. It's just a commercial. I really love crying. I feel like it gives me a real release. I'm also okay with other people's tears. I think it's a natural part of my life. I don't mean that everyone has to cry. It's just that I'm fine with crying. And I've had different times where, I'll have tears when I'm practicing yoga. This was a bit different. This was a huge release, and Erica wasn't expecting it. Neither was I. She was beautiful at holding space. The horse was there and really also was a big part of this. And I have to tell you another side of me. I'm also quite skeptical. So when someone talks to me about like there will be this conversation between the horse and I and this energy, I always go in as a skeptical scientist first. And this is why I love that Fotini brings in the science before the intuitive part of things or says that anyone can have this. It is hard to describe, but in that moment, I really felt that the horse and I were in some sort of conversation. Not that I could hear the horse talking to me, but there was definitely a real connection there. And a lot of stuff shifted after that. So again, the scientist in me cannot prove that this experience was part of that. But the next week when I talked to my friend Erica, I told her, I think this has impacted me. I can't say for certain that it was that experience, but a lot shifted. Different decisions that I was struggling with, some different emotions, and I felt like I had just softened. And that was the intentional word that I had started the practice with. And this is not an intentional word that I have ever started any practice with. So that's sort of my own experience, but obviously there's so much more that I can't even put into words. And I highly recommend that if there's horse wisdom yoga in your area, go and try it out and have your own experience. I think the biggest gift that we can give ourselves at any yoga practice is going in without expectations. Before I sign off here, I want to tell you how we could hang out together in person this year. So as I said, I'll be at the Toronto Yoga Conference April 3rd. I'm presenting there from 6 to 8 p.m. on the Friday, but I'll also be there all weekend, April 2nd to the 5th. It would be so fun to connect and see you there. I'll also be teaching yoga for pelvic health September 19th and 20th in Meaford, Ontario. That training is filling up pretty quickly, so if you are interested, make sure that you register soon. There's a deposit to hold your spot. And if we can't meet up in person, I offer one-on-one consultation calls. All of the details are on the connectedyogateacher.com about these events or how to book a consultation call. Thank you so much to our team over here at the Connected Yoga Teacher. Suzanne, Crunch, Nick, and Sinead, you have made my life so much easier lately. Thank you also, dear listener. You make this podcast possible. Alrighty, Connected Yoga Teachers, before I sign off, I want to know, what will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?